Hey friends, so we've been learning a lot about different famous African Americans and people that aren't quite so famous. But today I'm going to introduce you to a famous African American musician. We haven't talked about any musicians yet. And so his name is Muddy Waters, and this is called Muddy, the story of blues legend Muddy Waters. Now blues is a type of music that I really like, and it started down in the South with people who were in slavery. And it's based on a lot of the African traditional work songs and spirituals, and it's just kind of transformed over the years. And I left a video on the assignment that shows Muddy and his band playing one of the songs, just so you can get an idea of what the music's like. So this is about Muddy Waters. The author's name is Michael Mahin, illustrator Evan Turk. I really like his illustrations. I've read other books that have his pictures, and I really like the way they look. Can you see what this is? It's a cotton field. Because Muddy Waters was born on a plantation. There was not slavery anymore, but his family still lived in the area where they had slavery, down in Mississippi. McKinley Morganfield was never good at doing what he was told, especially when it came to playing in the mud. His mama should have been mad, but she couldn't help but laugh. Ah, my muddy baby, my sweet muddy baby. McKinley's mama gave him a life and a laugh, and then she was gone, forever. Oh, child long gone, oh, child, sail on. But McKinley did have Grandma Della. She scooped him up and tried to keep him clean, and finally just started calling him Muddy. And he had music. Muddy loved the say it with me voice of the preacher and the glory, glory singing of the choir. But the music Muddy really loved, they didn't play on Sundays. What Muddy really loved was fish fry music. It was shake off the dust and ring out your worries and laugh and cry and feel alive music. It was the blues, and Muddy couldn't get enough of it. To have the blues was to feel bad, but to play the blues was to take that low-down skunk funk, deep stomach hurt, and turn it into something else. Muddy liked the blues. Unfortunately, Grandma Della did not. A lot of times in the blues, they might be playing the harmonica, the guitar, the bass guitar, a lot of singing. Last I checked, you can't eat the blues for breakfast, said Grandma Della. No child of mine is going to waste his time with music. But Muddy was never good at doing what he was told. See his face? Doesn't look very happy. So he found himself a half-smashed kerosene can to beat on, and a wheezy accordion to squeeze, and a tired piece of wire to pluck, and he made himself enough noise to feel good. Not even Grandma Della could keep from dancing. So he found a bunch of things and turned them into instruments. One night, Muddy watched his hero, blues legend Son House. Sorry, sometimes I skip words. Smash an empty bottle, take the bottleneck, and smooth its jagged edges over a fire. This is called a slide, he said, dragging the bottleneck up the strings. The guitar howled like a wolf, powerful, lonely, and proud. That was the sound of the Mississippi Delta. That was the sound Muddy had in his heart. You see this right here? People still do that. Now it's usually made out of metal. You put it on your finger, and you rub it like this on the strings of the guitars, and it makes a really cool sound. Muddy saved his pennies and bought himself an old Stella guitar, excuse me, and practiced and played for anyone who wanted to listen, and a few who didn't. After a long while, the howl that was in his heart finally started coming out on his guitar. On weekdays, Muddy made the juke joints jump, playing for the workers when it was time to unwind. But when Monday came, Muddy was back in his overalls, back working in the fields. Sharecropping was back-busting, soul-breaking work, and Muddy was already in a bad mood when the new boss man started picking on him. Muddy had gotten good at burying his anger and his pride and his hurt. To do otherwise could have gotten him beaten up or worse. So slavery wasn't legal anymore, but a lot of people who had been former slaves and whose families were descendants of slaves still lived on the land where they had lived during slavery. And a sharecropper is someone who works on the land and they pay rent to the owner. And they usually have to pay for their house, they pay for the seeds, and they do all the picking and all the labor. But by the time they've paid the landlord for everything, they're really not making much, and so they can't really get ahead ever. It's a lot of hard work. But today, Muddy couldn't do it. He was tired of being picked on. "I ain't a boy," he said, "and I sure ain't your boy." The boss man's face went red with anger as Muddy walked away. "Stop right there, you'll never work at this town again." But Muddy was never good at doing what he was told. "Chicago's got a lot of people," he told Grandma Della, "but I don't think they ever had a Muddy Waters before. Me and my guitar are going to make it just fine, don't you worry." So he decided to leave Mississippi and go to Chicago. "Oh, child long gone, oh, child sail on." Do you think his grandma's probably happy? Probably not. And actually, they don't really know for sure when Muddy Waters was born exactly for sure. Is in the, let's see, he died in 1983 and he was 70. So they think he was born around 1913, but they don't know for sure. So this is probably in the, sometime in the 1920s that this is happening. The clack-a-track steam blur of an Illinois Central train rocketed Muddy and his guitar into the bustle and buzz of the Chicago South Side. Chicago was plugged in, turned on, and turned up, and so was its music. Records with electrified guitars and jazzy horns were making the blues jump all over town. Chicago was the big city of the brown bomber Joe Louis, the heavyweight boxing champion of the world. It was the city of the Chicago Defender, the legendary black newspaper dedicated to fighting racial injustice. And now it was the city of Muddy Waters. So this is very different than Mississippi. In the clubs, the bebop jazzing swing of horns and strings had laid itself down over the blues like a chiffon blanket. This was music by city smooth sophisticats, not country dustin' hound dogs. No one wanted to hear a country boy playing country blues. "You gotta shake the dust off," the club owners teased. "You gotta jazz it up." So he was used to playing music, but not in the big city. But Muddy was never good at doing what he was told. The way he figured, his playing was just fine. It was their hearing that needed help. So Muddy plugged in, turned on, turned up, and out came the sound of the Delta, buzzing and mad like an angry hornet's nest looking for a fight. It was a deep-feeling gut bucket, gut-aching music, full of life and love and trouble and pride. It made people stand up and raise their hands and stomp their feet and laugh and cry and come alive. It was nothing like the primped and polished sounds people were used to, and they loved it. Whoa, yeah, sail on, sail on. So here he is. He's playing a kind of sound they'd never heard before, coming straight out of the heart of Mississippi. Muddy loved the clubs, but the late hours and low pay took their toll. He couldn't live on change alone. One day, Muddy got a call. A friend was making a record at the Universal Recording Studios, and he needed a sideman to back him on the guitar. If Muddy played well, they might even let him record his own record. Finally, a chance. First day, they recorded his friend, and then they recorded him. Muddy did exactly what they told him to do. They added strings and horns in the soft and sweet Bluebird record, beat, beat, but Muddy didn't care. He was just happy to be making a record. So this time, he did do what he was told. Too bad they put someone else's name on it. Muddy couldn't believe it. This was supposed to be his big break. This was supposed to be his record, but it wasn't. At least not according to the cover. A year later, Muddy made a record for Columbia. This time they got his name right. Too bad they decided not to release the record. Muddy was crushed. "I play it like they say it, and I play it, and they still don't like it," he thought. "What am I supposed to do?" So here, they put the other guy's name, James Stewart, and his orchestra, but they didn't include Muddy Waters' name. And then this is the one they did put his name on, and they didn't release it. You can't get famous if nobody hears your music, right? When record producer Leonard Chase called, Muddy knew how to not to get his hopes up. Leonard just wanted Muddy to record Leonard's music, Leonard's way, but Muddy knew this might be the last chance, so he said yes. Soft is right, sweet and polite, said Leonard. That's what the cats are. That's where the cats are at. The cats are the kind of the people that listen. Muddy picked up his guitar. He walked to the microphone, but he couldn't do it. Not again. Muddy had never been good at doing what he was told anyway. When Leonard pointed to the horns, Muddy pointed to the exit. No horns, no jazz, no foolin', said Muddy. If I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail playing my music my way. There was lightning in Muddy's eyes. If Leonard could bottle that, maybe they'd have something. Okay, you get one chance, said Leonard. Don't blow it. So Muddy refused to do what the guy wanted him to do, the guy who was producing the record. He said, I'm doing it my way or no way. And he said, okay, you get one chance. Muddy sat down with his guitar. He pulled the microphone up close and he closed his eyes. Whoa, child. He remembered the dust and the plow and the meanness of the land and the softness of King Cotton. Oh, child. He called up the sticky heat of a summer night, the power of love and the need for connection in a world that is so good at pulling people apart. And he played just like Son House had taught him, not with his fingers, but with his heart. Muddy sang about life as he'd lived it, with all of its pain, its power, and its glory forever. So whenever they tell someone to write something or maybe do art or something like that, they say, do what you know. So they're telling him this, he's doing the same thing. He's making the songs about a life that he knew. Life down in Mississippi, working on the land and how hard it was. Still unconvinced, Leonard printed only 3,000 copies of the record and sent them to local stores. Muddy chewed his nails and waited. What if people didn't like his voice? What if he wasn't good enough after all? Muddy didn't have to wait long to find out. All across the south side, the boom and bounce of Muddy's voice thundered down from open apartment windows. People were talking. The new blues was something special. It felt honest and raw. It felt real. It felt like the past and the future and the country and all the city rolled into one. Not only did Muddy have a record, he had a hit. In 24 hours, it was sold out. Leonard printed more, a lot more. Remember, Muddy Waters is self-taught. It's pretty cool. One day, the Beatles would be shaking Muddy's hand. One day, the President of the United States would be tapping his toes. One day, the whole world would know the name Muddy Waters. One day was on its way. And here's a bunch of newspaper clippings, if you can see, that are real about Muddy Waters. He became very, very famous. You can look him up if you want more information. Oh, child, long gone. Oh, child, sail on. We're sailing on. So he was lucky because his dream came true. So here's a picture of him when he was a little bit older. This is what he really looks like. And now you'll recognize him when you see the video. In the video, he's the man that's singing. And like all good nonfiction books, it has some back information. So here's an author's note that tells you more about why he wrote the book and more about Muddy Waters. And here are some books that he looked at when he was writing the book to get more information. And here are some things that you could listen to if you're interested. And if you like music or want to learn more about the blues, you can check this out someday and look at some of the resources. So I hope you liked learning about Muddy Waters. I've always known about him, but I don't know much about his life, so I think it was interesting. And I hope you get a chance to listen to the video, obviously not just of me reading, but of him playing his music. All right, friends, happy reading.